The Eastern Georgian Bay Stewardship Council is a little bit lesser known, so I'm just going to spend a little bit more time talking about who we are and what we do before discussing about where we're headed in the future. The Eastern Georgian Bay Stewardship Council found their roots in 2000 as they were part of a fisheries stewardship committee, which acted as an advisory group to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And that group was split in 2006 and then became part of the Ontario Stewardship Network, which was run out of the MNR. That program ended in 2013, so in 2014, that is when the Eastern Georgian Bay Stewardship Council incorporated as a not-for-profit, and we've been moving forward ever since. Through that time, our mission has not changed. Our mission is to actively partake in management decisions and stewardship activities that promote the ecologically sustainable management of our natural resources for the enjoyment of present and future generations. And how we work on that is we work with community members, organizations, First Nations, businesses and agencies on various stewardship projects that try to contribute towards the health of Eastern Georgian Bay. We have a wide representation on our board. Many of our board members are residents of Eastern Georgian Bay. We have naturalists, anglers and hunters, marina and cottage resort operators, retired fisheries biologists, and we have some cottage association representatives as well. And they're also from, some of our members and our board directors are from in the French River area all the way down to the Severn Sound area, so we also have a geographic representation as well. So some of the projects that we worked on in the past, they're very much based on the ground. We do some things like annual workshops, we work on some education projects, but a lot of work in the past has been focused on fisheries. So creating, working with waterfront landowners to create bass nest habitat, working with other partners on cleaning up Crown Land campsites on the Moon River and the outer islands just outside of Parry Sound. We've created a booklet called Walleye Woes that goes over some of the issues that walleye are facing in various parts of Eastern Georgian Bay, and then promoting some solutions that we think people can get behind. We're, I think, perhaps most known for restoring walleye spawning beds. So we've restored 3 walleye spawning beds, Go Home Bay, Tadnak, and most recently the Key River. And then on the Moon River and the Musquash River, designed restored spawning beds for both walleye and lake sturgeon. I'm going to just talk a little bit about, we're working on a fish habitat assessment project right now, and I think that some of the tools and the things that we're learning from this project could perhaps be of assistance and of use in the future. So this is a longer term project. We started in 2015 and it will go till March 31st, 2018, or that's when the funding for this project is. It's through Environmental Damages Fund, so it is specifically for Parry Sound District. So we're working on 8 tributaries in that area. We've partnered with Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve, Georgian Bay Forever, and the Ministry's Upper Great Lakes Management Unit on this project to get some expertise on some of the things that we were doing to assess some of those, some of the spawning bed habitats. So we're looking at spawning, foraging habitat, and also nursery habitat for walleye, lake sturgeon, and sucker species. And as we're working on various tributaries, we are working with local organizations, and we've been working with a few of the First Nation communities as well as we are working on those tributaries. So just as part of some of our field work through that funding, we've been able to purchase a drone, which means that we can take aerial photography when we're doing research that can provide us with a lot of information. We've also, in the past, we used to look for walleye by shining flashlights in the water, which can help give you a sense of if they're there and if they're not, but we've learned through this project a new method of egg collection that helps us get a much better idea of what spawning is doing, taking things like water flow and depth and temperature. So those are some of the things that we're collecting on those rivers. Georgian Bay Forever has been instrumental in helping us with bathymetry mapping. So we've purchased a new low RANS unit that allows us to measure not just depth, but we're also able to look at the bottom. So is it a soft substrate, is it a hard substrate, and what density those aquatic plants are, because that will tell us a lot about fish And obviously where you have a lot of development, you lose that, you lose some of those natural areas that fish need to live. And then underwater photography, this is actually the Stewardship River, and looking in, we would not have seen that there were smallmouth bass and brown bullhead in there with the walleye and the suckers, but through snorkeling and doing some underwater photography, we're able to get a better sense of what's actually going on in these spawning areas. And then also plankton sampling, looking at the food. One of the handiest things that we've been using the drone for is comparing water levels. So when we think of water levels, we often think of Georgian Bay water levels. But there can be a lot of problems with the water levels that are coming in these tributaries, because when the fish move in, they need those water levels in the spring to be able to not just spawn, but those eggs need to stay underwater until they're able to hatch. So through taking this year, when we were out in the spring, our goal was to take aerial photographs every 3 days, and that helps us track those water level changes. So this is the Dillon Rapids on the Shibeshakong River, and through the drone photos and the measurements, there was a water drop of 40 to 50 centimeters. We did see walleye eggs that were stranded when those water levels went dry, and we know that that spawning bed is really vulnerable to water level fluctuations. So that's something that we can now consider moving forward with restoration projects, and that maybe that's not a very good site to restore because we can't control what water levels are coming down. But maybe we can do something at this site to allow them to have better access to the spawning bed that's farther upstream. In terms of future work, what we'll be working towards is doing the same types of projects, really working on the ground. We'd really like to increase, in the past when we do our walleye spawning beds, you're moving rock, you're using machine, and it's really hard to get community members out and involved in those projects. But we do really want to increase getting members of the community out and involved in our projects. We do a lot of fish work, but we aren't limited to just fish. We've definitely started some other projects like hosting an annual native plant sale and other things. What we have tended to do is look at gaps. We're always communicating with the other Georgian Bay organizations to see what's going on. Are there gaps that we can fill? Are there stewardship projects that we can do to help get some information where we might not have it? So that's really where we see ourselves continuing down that road. We have made a list of moving forward. This is sort of a longer term plan for the next 10 years as we move forward to get funding. Some of the projects is to continue with those fish habitat assessments. So right now we're limited to Parry Sound District, but it doesn't mean that we can't go farther north, go farther south, and also on the inland lakes as well, because it's very important on inland lakes. Keeping people updated on how fish are doing. So a lot of time, even the Upper Great Lakes Management Unit, they're out there and they're doing fisheries assessment, but that body to update community members on what's happening and what they're doing. So if we can be that voice, we can help people know what's going on. Monitoring some of our past restoration projects. We've been very dependent on the MNR to go and monitor the past restoration that we've done because they have the equipment. But with this new equipment that we've obtained through our funding, we can at least go and look at the habitat. We may not be able to do their trap netting, but we can go and look and see and make sure that the habitat, the restoration, is working as it was intended to. And then a new project that would require some longer term funding is trying to develop a volunteer project looking at aquatic insects on inland lakes, because there's very little information and there's a lot of gaps that the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve has identified. And that's something that we could really work with community members on. Continuing to assist with Crown Land campsite cleanup. We have the Parry Sound High School students there was a very generous donation from the community. Parry Sound High School students built thunder boxes this year to go out on the Moon River and the outer islands. So continuing to try to facilitate some of that. Public awareness on invasive species. So there's a lot of work being done on Phragmites right now, but there might be other species, especially with the past introductions or the past findings this summer of Asian carp. So different information and projects that we might be able to do around other invasive species. Continuing with the native plant sale to support our pollinator species. looking at doing some pollinator gardens at schools and municipal demonstration sites. That's something we're very interested in doing. Bird nesting platforms, and just continuing to work with the organizations, First Nations, agencies, and everybody who's doing such great work already on the Bay, and just continuing to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you.